Moving next onto our agenda is our monthly budget report. First item is informational. Monthly budget report. Deputy Superintendent Jones, are you ready to present?
I'm ready, sir. And I believe Jeff's still driving, so if you could just pull up the report so it's public facing. This is the monthly budget report for your January 2022 meeting. As the Deputy Superintendent of Operations, I am pleased to say that the Utah State Board of Education is fiscally sound. We're able to meet all of our known obligations and commitments. Our budget is intact. It's well our funds are controlled and managed well and within all of the applicable internal controls and policies and procedures. Again, just want to remind everyone that we're in the finance system that's part of the state of Utah State Finance Office. So we utilize their internal controls and their policies and procedures to the fullest extent, and then also incorporate our own at your direction. As you know, this is for what we call period 5, or for the November or month ending November 30th, 2021. At this point in time, we've just started the second half of our fiscal year. One of the key takeaways from this is, I get questions from board members, Chair Huntsman, a lot on, well, what should I be looking for? Well, about halfway through the year, and obviously we break it down here by section, right, for you to see your, and then within the section, the different programs. What's the key thing to look for halfway through any fiscal year is what's our expenditure rates versus the budget. A lot of sections, they execute the funding right at the beginning of the fiscal year, and some don't typically or oftentimes execute towards the end of the year. Just because a particular section hasn't, as you're seeing the facing of the assessment and accountability, hasn't expended particular or a lot of their budget, as you see in the blue line here, doesn't mean that there's any issues or problems. If we had issues with a particular section, we'd bring those to your attention, on our execution rates. So at this time, sir, pending any questions or concerns with the monthly budget report for the month ending November 30th, I'll move on to the discretionary funds report at your direction.
Good. Any questions from board members? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Please continue.
Okay, if we could, Jeff, if you could pull up the discretionary funds report. The next agenda. There we go. Call board members' attentions, Chair Huntsman, to the upper right-hand corner. Again, the upper right-hand corner is a summary of the initial and then remaining balances across your discretionary funds account, which consists of these sources of funding: state funds, general funds. FML stands for Federal Mineral Lease, Land Exchange, dedicated credits, and those totals. Call the board members' attention to the main body of this report. Right now, your projects, or what you've set aside from your discretionary fund, is a contingency of $200,000, a legal contingency of $250,000. You see the seats temporary programmer, the superintendent contingency funds of $200,000, the school report card phase 3, and then the continual research and development related to the funding study. All of these in the main body were approved by the board. You can see what dates those approvals took place by you. So these are essentially funds that are committed towards a specific project. If I could bring you back up to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that there's quite a bit of remaining balance in the state funds. Also, there's some funding available in federal mineral lease. So as I do every month, I just, respectfully request that board members take a look at any potential projects or research and development, or anything that any of you would like to see done, this would be the source for those. I mean, obviously it's subject to availability of funds or having enough funds and the allowability. For instance, federal mineral lease money is specific to research and development type activities, where state funds is pretty much unrestricted within reason. So just want to reiterate or reemphasize that this funding is available to you. It's your discretion to use those to use these funds in projects or manners that you see fitting towards your or with your position and in support of the students in your respective districts. With that, sir, that concludes the discretionary funds report. Any questions or concerns from board members at this time?
Deputy Superintendent Jones, can you explain to the board the process if they do have an idea or something they want to put a business case and move it forward on regarding that in that remaining budget?
Yes, sir. So I appreciate that. Any board member can contact myself or Deborah Jacobson with their idea. And then at that point, what we would do is we would requests for use of this fundings flow through the finance committee. As you know, I'm the principal staff member to support the finance committee. So we would take that idea or that concept or project idea through finance committee. We would do the work with the board member to put together a business case in that type of fashion for use of any of these funds. And then, of course, present to the finance committee for their review and ultimate action or recommendation or not, on whether or not to use these funds to the full board in a subsequent board meeting. Did I describe the process or answer your question for the process adequately, sir?
Yes, and it's an invitation that goes out quite often, and don't hesitate to visit. Deputy Superintendent Jones, if you have an idea, and of course it'll be vetted on whether the lands or rather the funds are restricted or not and how that plays out. So, and we've done this in the past and look forward to more of it in the future. So thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so please continue.
Well, sir, that's my jam. So
yeah, you're right.
So if we could turn it over to Chief of Staff Young for the final agenda item within this overall agenda item.
To 5.3.
Yes, sir. Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Chief of Staff Young, and then we've got both Sarahs, I believe, participating in this, I think, but Chief of Staff, you ready?
Yes, thank you, Chair Huntsman. So Sarah Young, Chief of Staff, it's actually with great pleasure today that I hand over the reins of the COVID-19 relief presentation to your other agency expert who has been leading in this space alongside me for over a year now. So with the chair's permission, I'd like to turn it over to Sarah Harward, who will be giving this month's and subsequent months presentations related to COVID-19. Chair?
Yes, Care Specialist Harward, are you ready for your presentation?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay. Sarah Harward, CARES Educational Specialist. Thank you for this opportunity to present today here with an overview of the current state of our COVID-19 federal relief funding for our K-12 education. Just as a friendly reminder, our COVID relief funding in Utah refers to multiple awards that we have received from both the federal and state legislature, which have been made available to our K-12 local education agencies through our office administration to address needs in response to COVID-19. As we present the updates to each month, we address them in terms of our oldest to our most recent awards so that you have a sense of where we are as a state in terms of reimbursing these funds to our LEAs to support them in their projects and local needs. Each month, we like to present this table to you that demonstrates our comprehensive nature of each of the awards that we have received and the specific purposes, guidelines, and amounts to give you a sense of to see where we are and what has been distributed to the field. We call your attention to the bottom of the chart where we see our total, as far as we've received $914 million that has gone directly to our LEAs, and we are managing over 1,100 awards that have been distributed to our LEAs. So starting off with round one, this is our CARES and our CRF, our Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which houses our SR1 and Gear 1 funds, which must be spent by September 30th, 2022, which oddly enough, it's come really fast. That is this year. So super exciting with that. And then just to give you an overview of where we are as far as reimbursements amount, this data was pulled December 29th of 2021 in preparation for this presentation. I want to highlight our SR1 90% award. We are at a reimbursement rate of 97% to our LEAs. So we are really close, looking really good. Our SR1 base is at 89.5%, and our Gear 1 has done really well too. We are at 71% now being reimbursed to the field. Also on this slide, we have the number of LEAs that have requested their full amount of their award, just for your reference to see where we are at. Our round two, this is our Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriation Act. This is where you see SR2 and Gear 2, which must be spent by September 30th of 2023. Just to give you some key points on SR2, we received SR2 in April of 2021, and over 90% of that total award has been distributed directly to our LEAs. And just as we were going through the LEA plans, we see that a majority of our LEAs are planning to spend their funds on addressing accelerated learning to fight that learning loss for our students, purchasing educational technology, and specifically implementing summer learning and our supplemental after-school activities. And we will just note that LEAs do need to fully request SR1 before they can request SR2 funds. This is just that so that funds don't get returned unnecessarily to the federal government, and so that we can do our best to fully support our LEAs in their community response to COVID-19. Here is our chart for reimbursements as far as the dollar amount and the percentage. We do see that these are a little lower just because of that requirement to spend SR1 before SR2. So we see them, our SR2 90% is at 28% reimbursed, and our SR2 base is at 24% reimbursed. Gear 2 is a little bit newer to the field. Awards were made in November of 2021, and we have not seen any reimbursements come in yet, but that's okay. Our LEAs are just focusing on getting those Gear 1 funds requested. And again, we do have at the bottom the number of LEAs that have been fully reimbursed for this SR2 and Gear 2 awards. Some additional federal awards from the CRISA Act. We have our Gear 2, which, like I said, was awarded in November of 2021. We see a total of over $11 million, which have been distributed to our LEAs, with 146 awards going to our LEAs, specifically serving special education and at-risk students. Additionally, the governor's office directed that a portion of the Gear 2 award go to the University of Utah Reading Clinic. That award is a little over $1.3 million, which has gone up since our last meeting. We did, at the direction of the governor's office, an additional $350,000 was awarded to the University of Utah Reading Clinic, and this is just from LEA awards that chose to waive their Gear 2 funds. We also see our Emergency Assistance for Non-Public Schools, or ENS. USBE is serving as the fiscal agent for this award by the U.S. Department of Education. And we have 22 schools with a total of $16 million in equitable services, which we are providing to our schools in form of reimbursement, as well as professional services, such as professional learning for their teachers and tutoring services available through this program. Round 3, our newest, is the American Rescue Plan Act. This houses our ARPE ESSER and ENS 2 awards, and these funds must be spent by September 30th of 2024. To give you a little overview on our ARPE ESSER, this was a $615 million award. 90% of those awards have gone directly to our LEAs. And then we have the 10% of the State Reserve, which did have some additional federal guidelines on how that State Reserve could be spent. So 5% of the total award, the $615 million, had to go towards addressing accelerated learning. So that's that $30 million. And this is We had a focus on this in December board meeting where you brought your projects to the meeting and you approved some projects. We placed those projects in the state plan addendum, which has then been sent to the U.S. Department of Education for review. Additionally, we have 1% that has gone to summer enrichment programs and 1% that has gone to evidence-based comprehensive after-school programs. These have been awarded through competitive grants, and the board approved the initial awards in alignment with available funds in the October 2021 board meeting. To give you an update on ARPE ESSER LEA plans, LEAs are required to take their plan to their local school board for approval prior to submission to USBE, and they are required to put that plan on their website so that the public can view it as well. We have received 171 LEA ARPE ESSER plans. 157 of those have been approved as of December 29th. 14 LEAs are in revision and 8 have chosen to either waive or not apply for this opportunity. And just as far as plans that are in revision, these are really minor technicalities or missing a signature, or their plan is not posted to their public website, which is a federal requirement. Just to give you some highlights as far as ARPE ESSER plans, there is an additional federal requirement that our LEAs must spend 20% of their award towards accelerated learning. After going through each of the plans, we see that our LEAs are spending on average about 36% on accelerated learning, so above that federal requirement, which just speaks to one of the needs at the local level where leaders have chosen to put resources, to put needs for our students, teachers, and families. In addition to accelerated learning, we see that the majority of our LEAs are choosing to spend on purchasing educational technology for students, capital improvements, including HVAC, and mental health services for students and community. Here is our reimbursement chart for ARPE ESSER. Because this is our newest award, we see that reimbursement levels are just really low, but we wanted to bring it to you today because we have started to receive reimbursements requests from the field. So we have reimbursed 4.6 million of the ARPE ESSER 90% award to the field. And then again, just how many LEAs have requested their full amount, which is 0 right now, but that's okay with this being our newest award, and it doesn't expire until September of 2024. Additionally, for the ARPE Act, we have ARPE Ins, our emergency assistance for non-public schools, which we also refer to as Ins 2. So right now, the application is actually out in the field right now with our private schools. It's due to USBE by January 21st, 2022. So we're in the process of receiving those applications. We do have some additional federal requirements as far as which schools can apply for ARPE Ins. One of the requirements being that a non-public school must meet or exceed 24% of total students in the school that are from households with a low socioeconomic status. Additionally, in Ins 1, schools, private schools were allowed to request reimbursement for items. This is no longer an option in ARPE Ins. Schools will only receive professional services from USBE. Now, because of all the great work that you did in December board meeting with all the state reserve projects, I just wanted to go through and highlight some of the projects in each of the ESSER categories, just to give you some information of where we're at and what work has been going on. Just to give you a little overview, as far as our ESSER State Reserve, we had 26 million available in funding, all of which projects must be in response to COVID-19. And then for ARPE ESSER, we have the State Flexible Reserve, which had 8 million available for projects that were in response to needs due to COVID-19. And then the ARPE ESSER Accelerated Learning, this is that 5% set aside, which was $30 million. And the projects must be in response to COVID-19. They must be evidence-based strategies, and they must be approved by the U.S. Department of Education. And like I said, we have sent that state addendum off for approval. Just to give you an overview of the logistics for state projects, all the projects come from that 10% base ESSER awards. All projects must be in response to COVID-19. All projects and funds are presented in board meeting and approved in open and public board meetings. And these state projects are required to conclude when their funds expire and are time limited according to which ESSER fund they come out of. So ESSER1 State Project Highlight, we wanted to showcase the Targeted Support and Improvement Summer Planning Project, or TSI, schools. So this project is for updating school improvement plans to focus on needs of students in student groups that have been performing below the lowest 5% of all schools. So we provided funds to 22 LEAs for this project and supporting 206 schools. For SR2, highlighting 3 projects for you. The first one being the Demonstrated Competency Assessment. We have over 60 educators working to expand and enhance the resources we have available related to demonstrated competency assessment. So they're working on 18 courses, which are in the process of being designed and will be uploaded to Canvas upon completion. Then the Scribble software. This provides accounts and access to all K-12 Utah public educators and students and gives professional support to those educators. Most recently, they had their MOOC training offered by UEN, and as of October 31st, 2021, they had over 15,000 users. Finally, the Digital Access and Education State Support Program. This is funding a digital equity and inclusion coordinator at the Utah State Library Division. They currently have assessed the initial baseline data for developing a statewide digital plan related to the support for virtual learning in the digital world. One additional SR2 project that we are excited to highlight is our K-12 Donors Choose partnership, which was approved in December board meeting. The $12 million is available to support our Utah K-12 public schools, teacher projects for classroom supplies and equipment in response to COVID-19. We encourage that our Utah teachers, they can sign up now with Donors Choose, and they'll be notified through that platform when the partnership goes live. But we will also, USBE will be emailing all educators and school leaders with details about the release dates. So this is a really exciting project. Then 2 projects I want to highlight for ARPE ESSER. These are 2 projects that actually the board voted on to come from the ESSER2 and move to ARPE ESSER. So this is our K-3 professional learning for literacy. We have 8,900 Utah participants enrolled in letters, which empowers teachers to understand scientifically based reading instruction. And then our early learning coaches for rural Utah. We have 8 coaches in place with our Utah Regional Education Service agencies. They're holding monthly professional learning community meetings, and the coaches are collaborating across LEAs and with state staff on addressing needs for early learning. Finally, I just want to highlight some additional USBE staff action. COVID-19 personnel are reviewing those LEA ARPE ESSER plans and supporting the revision of those plans. And as of December 29th, we have over 538 million awards to our LEAs. Additionally, program and operations staff launched board authorized projects in the Utah Grants Management System to meet that ESSER2 deadline. So we're happy to report that. Again, we've been working really closely with Donors Choose on communication materials for the upcoming launch for Utah K-12 teachers. And finally, USB staff have received final federal reporting requirements for ESSER, and we will be working to analyze existing state data sets to decrease LEA reporting for 2022. And with that, that concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Questions from board members. Vice Chair Davis.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for taking a look at the end there on the LEA reporting requirements and just making sure as those change federally that we are sort of adjusting statewide so that we are not putting more of a reporting burden on our LEAs than is needed. I know it's a busy, crazy time right now, and I'm sure that's much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Member Earl.
Yeah, I just a clarification on the library individual. And you had stated we hired an equity, diversity, inclusion librarian. Did I understand that right? That wasn't what I remembered from the contract, but I'm just trying to seek some clarification.
Chief of Staff Sarah Young, could you help us with that question?
Yeah.
Correct. Oh, pardon me. Thank you.
Oh, go ahead.
Sarah, thank you. Chief of Staff Young. So pardon me, Board Member Earl. So you are correct. The position that was approved is specific to supporting broadband. So I'll go back and double check to make sure that that language is consistent, because the individual is specifically working on making sure that broadband services are available to our K-12 families.
Okay, is there a time when this individual, and I don't know who it is, so they report to us on what they've been doing? Is there, do you know what I mean? Is there a time they say, yeah, this is what I've been engaged in?
Of course. So just for clarity, in terms of that question, we do receive monthly updates related to the actions as your staff at the State Board of Education. We require that as part of our MOU for this position. And we're more than happy to set up an opportunity for that individual to come and provide a report, probably starting in standards and assessment on their updates thus far, and bring that to the board in your next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Member Cannon.
Thank you. I'm interested in the K-3 professional learning for literacy and the LETRS program. I've heard some positive things about this, particularly from one teacher who's been involved in taking it and thinks it's so excellent. And I'm just wondering, we have a specific number, 8,900 Utah participants. Is there any thought to tracking their success after having taken this professional development in LETRS to see if it translates into improved literacy scores for their students?
Am I okay to answer that, Chair?
Sarah Harwood, do you want to
Okay.
answer that one?
Thank you. Yeah, so thank you, Board Member Cannon. Definitely. So Sarah Whipke is our lead on this project, and I can definitely talk to her on that. I'm not positive right in this moment, but I can definitely get back to you with an answer.
Well,
Sarah Whipke's on though.
I think we might have something that's just so good. And one of the things that worries me most is to have kids not reading at grade level by grade 3. And I think this is a great way to address that. And I would like to know if this investment in LETRS is a successful way to do that. So thank you. Oh, Sarah has raised her hand. Maybe she has a response.
Can you respond? But I also, before she responds, I invite board members, if you have a concern about LETRS and how it's embraced, I invite you to check with your LEAs in your own district, and because there's some good story. I mean, I haven't had a bad story, but I invite you to, on your own, to look in that space also. But go ahead, Sarah.
Yes, thank you. Sarah Whipke, Pre-K through 12 Literacy and Library Media Coordinator. Thank you for having me. I caught half the question.
By these 8,900 participants.
Yes, thank you so much for repeating that. So as far as outcomes, a lot of the LEAs are still finishing up like unit 2. So there are 8 units total, so they kind of have a long time to go before they get done. But those that have progressed earlier, meaning they started earlier, so some districts decided to start LETRS well before we were able to provide funds for that. And so those that have been doing this for 2 or 3 years have seen improvement in outcomes, absolutely. Much like anything, of course, it all depends on implementation. And so as long as implementation is going well and the LEAs have specific guidelines that they are choosing, we are not controlling implementation. That is up to them, of course. But yeah, it seems to be going very well. And like Chair Huntsman was saying, the positive comments have just been flowing in, which we sort of expected to occur once LEAs hit unit 2. That seems to be one that really excites educators. And so we've been seeing a lot of great reflections on how they're already using it in their classrooms and excited to be using it and seeing those outcomes change. So thanks for letting me be able to share that.
Just to follow up,
Yeah.
are you documenting this? So instead of, yes, this is a feel good and it seems to be turning out right, are you documenting it with data?
Yes, absolutely. We are collecting data throughout. We probably won't get the end data until they are complete. So of course, over those years that they have to complete, knowing that the ESSER funds are moving towards the 2024. So it'll be some time before we see the outcomes of the end game, basically. But yes, we are collecting that data so that we can be able to share it with you when the project is complete.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Member Klein.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about all of these COVID funds, regardless of what bucket they're in. Were there certain requirements for taking the money that were imposed upon the schools or districts? I mean, there are certain things that the money has to be spent on, right? But beyond that, to get the money, what did the schools and districts have to agree to?
Chief of Staff Young, do you want to comment?
I do. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Board Member Klein. So in terms of the funding itself, when the application went out to our LEAs, in addition to describing how the funds could be used, they also signed a set of assurances. The majority of those assurances are specific to receiving any federal funding. So an example of that would be you can't use any federal funds received through an award for lobbying expenditures. So we include all of those common ones that are just standard in that application document. As far as the COVID-19 component, I would call out that they did assure that all of the expenditures would be in alignment with the COVID-19 response and allowable use case, as well as that they would agree to provide the reporting requirements, which would be coming from the U.S. Department of Education. Noting that this funding went out so quickly, normally those reporting requirements are set up ahead of time, but in this case, they would be coming after the fact. So that's a process that your staff is currently working on in terms of reviewing those reporting requirements to figure out what we can address at the state level and then what information we specifically need for the LEAs. So those are the components that were described in the application that each LEA got to review before formally submitting their request for award.
Follow up?
Yeah, follow up.
Were there any mitigation strategies that were required or dependent on it that they had to comply with in order to receive the funds?
Chair, if I may.
Yes, please.
It's a great question. So in regards to ESSER 1 and ESSER 2, there was not any specific response or requirement related to COVID mitigation. However, in ARPE ESSER, it was required that the LEAs disclose if they had any specific policies related to common mitigation efforts. So an example of this would be if a school was specifically requiring that their students were to maybe have masks in common areas, there wasn't a requirement that they had that particular mitigation, but that if they did have that policy, that they disclosed that as part of the ARPE application. So each of our schools responded to those that were required by the federal government, noting if they had a policy, and the purpose of that was to make sure that all policies, including these plans, were then available to their parent population so that there was transparency related to any of those requirements for any LEA that was receiving ARPE ESSER funds.
You have a follow-up?
Yes. So none of those funds required specifically universal masking or proper wearing of masks?
Nope, they just had to disclose if they had a policy related to mask wearing in their schools, not that there was a requirement specific to implementing that solution.
No requirement for physical distancing or hand washing or anything like that?
Again, just policy disclosures if the school had a policy.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not seeing any other hands raised or additional questions for both Sarahs. Did you want to wrap it up or?
Nope, Chair, that was it.
That was it?
That was it.
Well, thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Appreciate your work. We had three Sarahs kind of in a row there.